guys, I'm going to teach you today about our next step in mapping, which is really getting into the depth of map making. So we're going to talk about this thing called isolines. And just to start off, I want to show you guys a few things that you could do on your own if you want to print something out to help you out later. So first off, go to your class and then go down to where it says class documents. And you'll see here at the bottom, class documents link. And you will see within this folder, class documents folder, notes right here. And there are a couple of things here in unit 2. Number 1, the notes that I'm taking right now are called mapping isolines. And then there's this sheet that you can go back to back here where it says homework and worksheets, unit 2. You'll see this thing that says copy of isoline practice. These are 2 things that you could print out if you wanted to, which I'll be looking at a little bit later on. Okay, so let's come back to this. So just first, some vocabulary so you know what I'm talking about when I use these words. You don't have to write these down necessarily, but a field is a region of space where we're measuring some type of quantity. Most of the time when we're talking about maps, we're talking about elevation. We're measuring elevation above sea level, and so we plot a whole bunch of things on a map above sea level. A field quantity is the value that is being measured. So it could be temperature, it could be elevation, it could be water depth, barometric pressure, all kinds of different things can be plotted on a map. But a field is just the space where we're doing it, the map where we're doing it, and the field quantity is the thing that we are actually measuring. So there's lots of different types of field maps. One type that we're going to use a lot is contour maps or topographic maps. Those are the elevation maps that I was referring to earlier. Temperature map is called an isotherm map. Notice the iso meaning the same and therm meaning temperature. Isobar maps are pressure maps, so we use those a lot in meteorology, which we'll get to later. Isohyet maps are precipitation maps. A bathymetric map, which is a lovely name, I love that one, is a water depth map. And you might see some of those later on where you're looking at underneath of a lake or an ocean, okay? So bathymetric, think like bath, taking a bath. It's the same idea, going down under the water, okay? So an isoline is a line that connects places that are the same. And so we're learning in this lesson about how to draw isoline maps. So these are lines that connect places of equal field value, equal value on your field. And so the reason we do this is just to make things a lot easier to understand. Because if you look at something like this is just overwhelming. It's just like somebody vomited a whole bunch of like numbers onto a United States map, and you're like, what in the world's going on there?
I love working with you.
Me too.
Red heart emoji.
Pink heart emoji.
Yellow heart emoji.
Blue heart emoji.
I hate Lee though.
Puke emoji.
Puke emoji.
So it's hard to understand. And so we draw lines on it, and sometimes we even add color to it to make it a little bit more understandable. So this is annual precipitation in the region of the United States over a long time period. And you can immediately see where it's dry. You can see where there's more rainfall, especially up here in the Northwest, and it's really dry down here in Arizona, California. So you get the idea from this map that you can easily interpret it. And this is done by connecting places that are the same, by isolining. So what do I mean by that? How do we actually do that? Well, let me show you what I mean by that. So let me go back to here. So we have a bunch of values on a map, right? And so just a very simple version of this, we're going to connect the places that are the same. And to do that, we just are going to connect all the 30s together. So I just draw a line for all the 30s. Let's say we go by 2. So 32, we can connect that. That goes over here. Well, there's no other 32s, but I know that it's going to go in between here because it goes in between 31 and 33. 34, I can connect these. Got to go in between these 2 dots. And so what I've just done is I've drawn an isoline map connecting places that are the same. So that's just a simple version of it. Okay. All right. Now, yeah, I did that right. Look at that. Okay, let me just clear off the board. I'm going to erase all that. Okay. So moving on, let's look at some rules. And these are probably things that you should write down or at least be aware of. When we're drawing an isoline map, there are 6 rules. So rule number 1, lines cannot touch. Okay. And that's really important. You cannot have the lines crossing each other or even touching each other, because if you think about it, if a line is worth, let's say, 10, and another line is worth 20, and then they cross each other, like, for example, if I have a line going like this one's worth 10, and this one is worth 20, well, what is true about this point right here? Okay, what is the value of that? Is it 20? Is it 10? No, it's nothing. It's an undefined point, basically. It can't be both. So you can't have lines touching each other. Okay, they can be really close to each other, but they can't cross. Lines should extend all the way to the edge of your map. So if you have a map that is like this rectangle here, you have to have the line go all the way across the map. Okay, if you start your line here and then it stops, well, then we've just left this undefined at the end of this thing. So you always have to go all the way to the edge of your map. And I'm really critical about that. If you leave it off by a centimeter, I'm going to mark it wrong. So make sure you go all the way to the edge of the map. Okay, lines have to loop around to themselves. So what do I mean by that? Well, imagine, actually, let me just erase this quickly. Imagine if I had a map like this. They can either loop around to themselves or go to the edge of the map, one or the other. Okay, so you can go like this, and then let's say it's coming back around again, and you're like, oh, well, I'm almost there. I could go to the edge, or you could just loop it back to itself like that. And you'll see some examples of that as we move along. You'll see some circles on a map sometimes, and they loop around like this, and they might get smaller and smaller and smaller. This represents a hill when you're talking about a topo map, a topographic map. Okay, higher elevation right there in the center. It's like just a mountain. Okay, so that's rules numbers 1 through 3. Let's check out the rest of them. Rule number 4: ISO lines should look believable. This one's a little bit tricky to make understandable to you in a video. I'd have to really show you, and you'll see this as you go along. As you do examples with this, you'll learn what believable means and what unbelievable means when you're drawing maps. One thing that students often do is kind of related to what I was just drawing earlier. If you have a map like this and you're drawing your lines and you come off the map like this and you're coming around, and let's say you're like this, okay, and it comes back to here, and then a student will go, oh, I should just get off the map like that. Well, probably a better thing to have done in this case is just to kind of connect these together like that and just ignore this area right here. You didn't have to go to the edge of the map necessarily. Just loop it around like that. That's one thing that's more believable looking. Okay, rule number 5. I said there were 6 rules. There's 5 rules. Rule number 5: use a pencil. I probably should have made that rule number 1. You're gonna mess up. I guarantee it. It's something that everybody does, including myself. And so use a pencil so you can erase your mistakes and make it look better. Okay, so those are the rules of isolining. And now we're probably going to do some practice. But before we do so, let me just show you some examples of some topographic maps, some contour maps that show elevation. So this is a typical one. See, over here is the ocean. The ocean always has an elevation of 0 above sea level. And so we work our way up from that. Each one of these lines represents an amount above sea level. So if you look at this, there's like an island here, and the island gets higher and higher as you go up the island. Over here, if you go up the river, there's a mountain over here. So this is 10, let's say, meters, 20 meters above sea level, 30, 40, 50 is labeled, 60, and 70. Okay, so we have a hill here that's at least 70 meters above sea level. Okay, that's just an example of a topo map. We'll talk about what these are later on. That's something we'll discuss later. Okay. All right, so let's do a little bit of practice here. You can look at the screen and just follow along. I would have you do this in the classroom. In fact, I'd probably bring somebody up to the front of the room to make them embarrassed in front of everybody. But let's just do this as an example. Okay, so I have a 30 here and a 30 here and a 30 here. I'm going to connect those all together. Remember, one rule is always start from the edge of your map. So I'm going to go down to here, and I'm connecting the 30s together. Okay. And now, obviously, there's no more 30s, so I'm kind of heading this way, so might as well just go to the edge of the map up there. Okay, I could loop it around, but it might be a little bit weird in this side over here. All right, 32. So here's a 32. Here's another 32. Now where do I go? Well, I have to come up this way. I can't cross over there, right? So I'm going to go in between 33 and 31, because obviously 32 is in between there, in between 31 and 34. And now where do I go? Well, I'm kind of heading this way. The other line headed this way, so I'm just going to go off the map there. But don't forget, I can't leave this hanging down here. So where do I go here? Well, there's nothing close to 32 up at the top of the map, so I'm just going to head off the map over here. Okay? So just kind of give you an idea. 34, here's a 34, here's a 34, and here's a 34. So I'm going to connect these together. Now notice, I go in between 35 and 33. Here's 34 here. Here's 34 in between here because 33 and 35, right? Where do I go now? Well, I got to get up to that one up there. So I'm going to hit that one. And now I could go up here, but there's one over here. So I might as well just connect that all together. And now you can see an example of me looping around. And that's totally acceptable. All right, I got to do 36 because I'm going by twos. There is a 36 here. There's no others. This is a tricky one. I can't go out. I can't go away from this area. So I'm going to stay inside of here. Essentially, I'm just making a little bubble inside of the bigger bubble. Okay, so there's my 36 line. All right, so that's just an example of how to ISO line. Okay, so you guys were given a worksheet last week that is in these notes. I'm going to show you how to do this. And by the way, the worksheet looks like this. Okay, so it's got a bunch of them on there as practice. For all of you that are remote, you can print this off yourself. So let me just go back to this drawing right here. So I'm going to do this as practice. You can follow along with me or pause the video, try it yourself, and then see if you get them right. These first couple are a little bit unbelievable just based upon the numbers. So I'm going to draw the 28, the 29, and the 30. This is probably not very realistic, but here's a 28, here's a 28, here's a 28, and here's another. So I'm just kind of swinging it around here. 28's over here, and just looping around like this outside of all those other ones. And notice that everything inside of my bubble is bigger than 28, and everything outside is lower than 28. Okay, so that's an important thing to take note of. Here's 29. I'm drawing 29, 29. This is not so bad, right? I mean, these are easy ones right here. And then here's the tricky part. It just goes around like this. Actually, that wasn't very tricky, but there's your 29 line. Notice everything inside is 20 or above 29. Here's my 30. Okay, 30, 30, 30. And remember, anything bigger than 30 has to be inside the bubble. That would be 31. Okay, so that's an example of that. You can see if you got that one right or not. Here's another one that you guys can try. And it's the next one down. So this one's got a little bit more data to it, but nothing too terrible. 16, 17, and 18. I'm actually going to start with 18. I'm going to work from the outside in. So here's 18 right here. And here's 18 right here. Notice how I went around the 19 like that. Now also, please notice, I could go outside the map, or I could try to swing it in underneath of here. That's possible you could do that. Okay, here's an 18 right here, connecting that one. Here's another 18, 18 down here. 19 is going to be outside of my circle, so I'm swinging around like this. And now I could try to squeeze it underneath of here, or I could go outside and just know that, technically speaking, what I'm doing outside of this map is swinging around like this. Either way, it doesn't matter. You could try to fit it if you want to. All right, 17. Here's 17, 17, 17. Okay, swinging around. And notice how this stays inside of the 18 bubble. Okay, so anything smaller than 18 is now inside of my circle. And anything smaller than 17 is inside this circle. And then we draw 16. And again, the same idea. We got to keep all the smaller numbers inside of the 16 bubble there. I kind of missed the 16. I meant to hit that there. And then come around like that. All right, and notice everything smaller is inside. All right, so those are some two really, really simple ones. You get the general picture. Okay, so let's do a little bit more complicated. Now, this one is a little tricky. I believe this was on the Regents exam one year, and they had to draw, I think, 2 ISO lines on this map. I'm going to do a few more. So let's go by 20s, and we'll start with the 80 line. The 80, this is representing inches of snow in the winter season. It's around Buffalo, Niagara Falls area. Okay, so here's an 80 right here, and here's an 80 right here. So I know I'm going to connect these together like that. Okay, look for other 80s on the map if there are any. There's nothing down here next to 80. There's an 80 here. Is there any 80s up here? No. But I have 78 and I have 81. So I know I have to go in between there, probably closer to 81. So I'm just going to put a fake dot there so I know I'm going that direction. Remember, you're using pencil anyway, so you might as well put a dot on the map. 75, 90, I know I've got to go in between there. All right, so I'm going to connect here. 75 and 81. Well, I'm going to have to go around that, right? Because I can't go in between here. So I'm going to go up and over the 81 like this. And then I'm going to connect to this 80 over here. Now I'm going off the map, so I might as well just continue off the map like that. What about down here? Are there any 80s down here? No. So I'm kind of heading this direction and stop at the map right there. So there's my 80 line. Okay. I'll draw the 100 line. Here's a 100 right here. Are there any more? There's one right there. And there's one at the bottom down here too. That's going to be tricky. Okay, so I've got to connect 100s. Here's a 95. Here's a 110. I know I've got to go in between right here. Here's a 90 and a 110 right down the middle. So now I've got a bit of a line to follow, okay? I can go this way. Now I am heading off the map, but notice there's 105 here, so it kind of goes that direction, but doesn't actually go near it. Now I could swing through here too and come down and around, or I can go off the map and just pretend that I'm going down and around. Really, it's going outside like this, okay? Here's a 100 over here. I got to continue this line. Notice there's nothing near 100. There's 102 here. I could swing this around close to that if I wanted to, but I've got to go away from those bigger numbers. Let me just erase that so it looks a little bit better there. Okay. All right. Let's continue. 120. Here's a 120. Here's are there any others? There's one down there. Here's a one right there. So I got to make another loop like this. This gets a little tricky in here. So I'm going around the 122. I've got to go in between 121 and 119, and then I've got to somehow get over there. And here's the other part. There's the 120. I've got to go in between 118 and 140. Now notice 110, 130. I got to go in between 118, 130. I got to go in between. So I'm coming back. Actually, I'm going to make a loop back. I got to go in between 102 and 130, and now I've made a loop, and that's okay. That's good. 140. Here's 140. Here's 130, 160. There's only one 140 on this map. That's okay. We'll make it work. Okay, we're going to come around like this, through here, and I got to come around again. And you can see I'm making a smaller loop, kidney bean shape there. Okay, 160. Just got to make a loop for it. 160 is right here, and I've got to stay inside my circle. So there you go. That's 80 through 160. I forgot about this 100 down here. I got to make sure that goes to the edge of the map. And there you go. Okay, that's the completed map. That's a good one. All right, so now that you've done and seen a little bit of practice, I'd like you to do a little bit on your own. So you have this map, and what I'd like you to do is, it says this right here, complete the 20, 40, 60, and 80 contour lines on this map. Okay, 20, 40, 60, 80. And then there's this map. This is an isotherm map. What I'd like you to do, this should say iso lines, okay, isotherm lines. I'd like you to complete the 40, 50, 60, 70, and 80 isotherm lines on this map that shows temperature. 40, 50, 60, 70, and 80. And that's it. And bring your completed map to class the next time that you're here.